Hi, my name is Sarah Marketon. Currently, I am a freshman at the University of Minnesota in the Twin Cities, studying agricultural education. Last spring, I graduated from the Howard Lake Waverly Winstead High School. I live in Howard Lake, where my family and I raise pigs, beef cattle, and chickens. In high school, I was very involved with FFA, which led to me discovering the World Food Prize and traveling abroad. My trip was an internship through the World Food Prize organization funded by Dr. Norman Borlaug. Ethiopia produces a lot of coffee, teff, which is like wheat, sheep, and goats. Most Ethiopian farmers are subsistence farmers, meaning they grow enough to feed their families, and that's about it. These next pictures show the group I was working with conducting a ram selection. This was done to teach local farmers about choosing breeding stock and castrating non-breeding stock. The hotel I stayed in during this trip cost about 60 US cents. There was no running water, which meant no shower, sinks, or toilets. This is what the houses in the village look like. They are built from stones, mud, and straw or twigs. Here you can see the two levels to the house. On the bottom level, livestock are kept, while people live on the top floor. The weather on the trip surprised me. I expected it to be hot since I was in Africa. The average temperatures while I was there were between 50 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit. This is because I was there during their winter season, even though it was summer back home. The one time I experienced hot weather was when I traveled to the Rift Valley for a couple days. Here it was around 95, and remember, I was there in the winter. We met with a nomadic tribe, which is shown in the next few pictures, who were suffering from a drought. The only thing I could smell in the 95-degree heat was rotting animals, like the one shown in this picture. As you can see, this calf is pretty skinny, and the same could be said about the rest of the livestock and the people. In addition to working on the sheep project, I also worked on a chicken project with a group of scientists from the UK. The title of the project was called Chicken Health for Development. We did a lot of work in the lab looking at different blood serum samples to identify whether specific antibodies were present for different diseases that we were looking for, like Newcastle or avian influenza. So it was very interesting for me to get my first experience really working in the laboratory. The only lab work that I had done up until this point was different school projects, different parts in the science whenever we'd have to do a lab there. And, it was just very small compared to the lab experience that I had while I was in Ethiopia and working with this group from the United Kingdom. And then, in addition to that, I was able to interview traditional healers since we were trying to figure out what kinds of diseases were present. We were talking to traditional healers and some of the methods that they use, and just trying to gain a better understanding for how chickens are raised in Ethiopia. And on the research campus, one of the people in the group from the UK was giving presentations to the employees so that they knew how to follow biosecurity rules and to just make sure that their chickens are healthier, since the spread of diseases is a big problem. We stayed in a very nice house in a gated community, so I always felt safe. I made a lot of friends while I was living with this group from the UK, and even got to try my hand in the kitchen in a local restaurant. While I was in Ethiopia, I learned that there's a need for improving agriculture. In the United States, we plow with big four-wheel drive tractors that cover hundreds of acres in one day. In Ethiopia, farmers plow with oxen and cover minimal amounts of land each day. Cultural traditions and beliefs are preventing farmers from being more productive. For example, the nomadic tribe I met with has refused irrigated land because that would require them to settle in one spot. In the future, I hope to have a career working to change agricultural practices within countries like Ethiopia. My favorite memory from the trip was spending 3 days without electricity after a bad rainstorm. The reason it was my favorite is because this taught me to be thankful for the small things in life, like running water and being able to plug in a small stove to cook meals. One of the unique experiences I had was touring a dairy farm. There are only 2 well-established dairy farms run like we are used to seeing in the United States. Most cattle in Ethiopia are used both for meat and milk, so having strictly a dairy herd is nearly unheard of. The farm I went to is called Genesis Farms. They hand milk all their cows, which as you can see are Holsteins. While we're on the topic of unique experiences, eating the local cuisine always proved interesting. Traditional Ethiopian food is wat and injera. The injera is the rolled up bread on the side of the plate. It is made from teff, which I mentioned is like wheat and one of Ethiopia's major agricultural products. Wat is kind of like stew. There are many kinds of wat on this plate. Since this is a variety dish, it is called bayonet too. In addition to the traditional meal, I enjoyed Mexican food at a place called Family Restaurant in a town called Debrecen. There is a license plate collection from around the world, and I happened to find a Minnesota license plate. One of my favorite souvenirs was bringing home a glass bottle of pop, since that is how all the pop is served in Ethiopia. One food experience that I may not try again was eating raw meat. It is considered a delicacy and is only eaten for special occasions like my going away party. The meat hangs out in the open. You order a chunk and the workers slice it off the carcass that you see in the picture. Lastly, I talked about coffee being another main agricultural product. Coffee ceremonies take place daily in the homes of Ethiopians. First they brown the coffee beans after picking them off the tree, then grind them and finally brew a pot of coffee. I hope that this video has interested you in traveling abroad, or maybe even pursuing an internship of your own. If there are any questions about the video, about the World Food Prize, or my internship that I haven't answered well enough, and you're just looking for some more information, Miss Seibert knows how to get a hold of me, and I would be more than willing to answer any questions that arise.